Okay, so now we are finally going to get into stance. Neutral stance. This is the stance that we most commonly take while fencing. It's just a comfortable thing to wait in, to stay in. And we are going to take it like so. We have the center line. I'm going to assume that my opponent is somewhere along this center line. By the way, this thing in front of me is not a longsword thing. This comes from Gerard Thibault's rapier manual of 1630, I think 1630. However, I have it, and I thought it might be useful for what we're doing. So we have our center line here. If I put my body at a 45-degree angle to this center line and have my hips facing 45 degrees from that line, with my feet just a little bit wider than my hips. Just a thing with me. I don't like using the term feet shoulder width apart. I like saying feet a little bit wider than the hips. I think it connects us more to our hips, and I think it just works for more people. From here, my hips need to face my opponent, who's down this line. And my feet are facing straight ahead, 45 degrees from my opponent. So how am I going to get there? I'm going to, again, come up onto my toes a little bit, take my hips, and I'm going to turn them towards this center line. So the center line is now between my hips. And now look what's happened. This hip has rotated somewhat externally. This gives me a position that I can move around in, but that is otherwise relaxed and at the same time loaded and ready to move in whatever direction I needed to. So we're going to, what was the next thing I was talking about here? Yes, okay, right, waiting. So from here, our weight needs to once again shift around. And when we think of our weight shifting around, think of kind of this ball, right? Think of where our center of gravity is. And think of our hips. Think of our hips as carrying that. So when I want to move towards my opponent along this line, I need my hips to move across that line. As my weight starts to move forward, I run into a slight issue. I run into this place out here where I run into a place out here that's sort of outside anything that my body is supporting. Well, what do I do about that? Because I can't really move myself forward very much if I'm just going to fall over. We continue to externally rotate. As the hips move along this line, this hip rotates further. This heel comes in. This heel gives us a base. And we can do this with our hand. Arm comes forward. Weight shifts this way. See how this externally rotates until we get to a point where all of my weight is on this foot. I'll show you from the side. Weight transfers forward. On the other side, hips move along this line. Very subtle. Little bit of external rotation here. Creates enough stability for us to be in this position. Now this is unstable. This is not a stable position. We pass through this position in the act of stepping in. So I want us to sort of get comfortable with this. And how I'm going to do this is from a stance with the non-dominant foot forward, keep that bit of external rotation, and just sort of come up onto this leg. And we want to be comfortable with being here. Get low with it. Some of you may not be able to do this right away. This is something to work towards. We can develop this. Again, external rotation, watch the knees. Make sure that your knees and toes are pointing in the same direction. We do not want to do this with this structure broken. If these toes are out, these knees must also be out, which means these hips must be externally rotated. But we can develop this by starting here in the center. Got these nice 4 cardinal directions, and I can take my toe, put it down here, and then out here, and then back here, and then even back here. Practice that on both legs. And yeah, maintain balance as you do this. Something to work on. Strengthen the hips. And what is the next step here? Right, lateral pressure. Waiting for lateral pressure. This is much easier to practice with somebody else. You can both get into a neutral stance. Put your right hand out along your center line and push against each other's the knife edge of each other's right hand. Again, coming up onto the toes, using the hips to provide pressure this way. I can sort of do this with the spear. From here, again, now notice I'm kind of, in this case, noticing I'm hip hinging to get into this position. Here, everything is right at my center, and if I am going to continue pushing past my center, again, hips need to move so that they are in this line. With resistance, and you see that here I'm actually bending the staff as I rotate through. All comes from the hips. I am not trying to push with my arms. If I just push with my arms, I can't bend this spear. This is an 1 1/8" ash spear. I can't just bend that with my arms. If I'm going to bend it, it has to be done with my hips. Next up, grip.